Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, our second session looking at Two Tragedies in One, or Two Lamentable Tragedies. Oh boy, are they lamentable, by Robert Yarington. And they've been quite bloody so far, quite lamentable. Quite a lot of hammer work has occurred. I think we can safely say that Merry, the hammer murderer of this play so far, is not going to be murdering anyone else with this hammer because he lost it in the last victim. So anyone who's a bit squeamish about descriptions of bloody murder, maybe want to skip this one. Just because we've enjoyed it, because some of us are just obviously cruel and in that way, doesn't mean that everybody in the universe is. It may not be your cup of tea. There are two murder plots happening, two tragedies as it were, and they're in one, so you get to catch them in one play, but sadly we're doing it over 3 sessions, so all of that logic, and so it's 1 in 2, 2 in 1 in 3. Anyway, reading this section of the play, going from Act 2, Scene 4 to the midway through Act 4. Reading today, Fallerio, Truth and a Gentleman, is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, I'm a historian, and I'm in Hull.
Reading the other murderer, Mary, as well as Vesuvio and Salter, is...
Hello, I'm Valentina. I am an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading Williams, servant to Mary, as well as Duke and second Waterman, is...
Rachael Nicole, actor in New Jersey.
Reading Pertillo, nephew to Fallerio, who may not have a happy day, as well as Turqualo, Cowley and woman, is...
Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
And reading one of the neighbours, Loney, and second murderer, is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading first neighbour, Rachael and Alberto, is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and this is going to be interesting, me playing Rachael while she's in the room. It's kind of weird.
Yes, yesterday Rachael played Rachael, but Rachael can't play Rachael all week because we like to swap the parts around. Reading second neighbour, first murderer, Covetousness, and / Avarice, is...
Lois Potter, retired academic living in London.
Reading, yes, you've guessed it, third neighbour, Sostrata, murder / homicide, and third Waterman, is...
Hi, Helen Scott, based in Suffolk.
And reading fourth neighbour, Allenso, and first Waterman, is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and other things, I'm sure. So, without further ado, Act 2, Scene 4. We've just had a scene with Rachael and Mary hiding the body. There's a body of Beach being hidden underneath a pile of wood, underneath some faggots. This scene effectively perhaps continues within this world. We're not fleeing all the way to Padua. We're staying in London. Enter 3 or 4 neighbours together.
Neighbours, 'tis bruited all about the town that Robert Beach, an honest trambler, had his man deadly wounded yesternight at 12 o'clock when all men were asleep.
Where was his master when the deed was done?
No man can tell, for he is missing too. Some men suspect that he has done the fact, and that for fear the man is fled away. Others that knew his honest, harmless life, fear that he himself is likewise made away.
Then let commandment everywhere be given, that sinks and gutters, privies, crevices, and every place where blood may be concealed, be thoroughly searched, swept, washed, and nearly sought, to see if we can find the murder out, and least that Beach be thrown into the Thames. Let charge be given unto the watermen, that if they see the body of a man floating in any place about the Thames, that straight they bring it unto Lambert Hill, where Beach did dwell when he did live in health.
I'll see this charge performed immediately.
And exit first neighbour.
Now let us go to Master Beach's shop, to see if that the boy can give us light of those suspicions which this cause doth yield,
This is the house. Call Master Loney forth.
Oh, Master Loney, doth the boy yet live?
And enter Loney.
Or can he utter who hath done him wrong?
He is not dead, but hath a dying life, for neither speech nor any sense at all abideth in the poor unhappy youth.
Hear you of when where his master is?
No, would we could. We all that knew his life suspect him not of any such offence.
Bring forth the boy, that we may see his wounds.
And they bring forth in a chair the boy with a hammer sticking in his head. So, yeah.
What say the surgeons to the young man's wounds?
They give him over, saying every wound of 6, whereof there's 7 in his head, are mortal wounds and all incurable.
They survey his wounds. Enter Mary and Williams.
How now, good Harry, hast thou hid my fault? The boy that knew I trained his master forth lies speechless, and even at the point of death. If you prove true, I hope to escape the brunt.
Why, fear not me. I have concealed it yet, and will conceal it. Have no doubt of me.
Thanks, gentle Harry, thou shalt never lack, but thou and I will live as faithful friends, and what I have shall be thine own to use. There is some money for to spend today. I know you mean to go and see the fair.
I fain would go, but that I want a cloak.
Thou shalt not want a cloak, or aught beside, so thou wilt promise to be secret.
And gives him his cloak.
Here, take my cloak. I'll wear my best myself, but where did you lie this last night?
At the Three Cranes, in a carman's hay loft. But I'll have better lodging soon at night.
Thou wilt be secret.
And exit Williams.
I will go and see what stir they keep about Beech's shop, because I would avoid suspicion.
And goes to them.
God save you, gentlemen. Is this the boy that is reported to be murdered?
He is not dead outright, but please it God, 'twere better he had been left this wicked world than to live thus in this extremity.
A cruel hand, no doubt, did the deed. Why pull you not the hammer from his head?
That must not be before the youth be dead, because the crowner and his quest may see the manner how he did receive his death. Bear hence the body, and endeavour all to find them out that did the villainy.
And they exit except for Mary.
Do what you can. Cast all your wits about. Rake kennels, gutters, seek in every place, yet I will overgo your cunning heads, if Williams and my sister hold their tongues. My neighbours hold not me in the least suspect. Vain of my former conversation. Were Beech's boy well conveyed away, I'd hope to overblow this stormy day.
And exit. Okay, I've got lots of thoughts here. Lots of thoughts. Okay, it's we've got sort of CSI fourth neighbour / police procedural fourth neighbour. I mean, the fourth neighbour is going, okay, we need to look for blood. We're looking for the locus in quo. We need to find where the body, the primary crime scene was. Look for blood. Look for bodies in the river. Being really a thing. And then they bring in the and I thought it was body. But no, the boy's still alive, technically. He's got the hammer sticking in his head. They brought him in. Why have they brought him in? You don't bring a mortally wounded person like this out in a wheelchair just for everyone to have a little look at. You leave them in bed, for God's sake. But hey, no, because I thought this was this is the pathologist report. This is, no, it's a doctor's report. The man's boy is not dead yet. And then Mary, useful suggestion there. Why pull you not the hammer from his head?
Because I need it back.
Yeah. It's got my name written down the side. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, they're not saying, well, we don't want to remove it because, the blood loss and the thing, and we daren't remove it yet. It's no, we just want to make sure the coroner can have a look at it later. And So there's so much of this which is very, very logical and very and lands very well, but there's just little details we're just going, fascinating. Thoughts from the room? Who wants to leap in on this one? Lynn, and then Elizabeth, then Eric.
Well, plus, like, William's going to the fair. What? It's like my master just murdered somebody in cold blood, but I'm going to go to the fair.
Yeah, Lois, I'll just step to you first.
Williams is engaging, I think, in a little light blackmail and probably intends to keep on with it. First he hints he could do with the cloak, then he says he'll have somewhere better to stay tonight. I mean, who's going to pay for that, do you think? It's very much like what Michael was doing in Arden of Faversham. I mean, if things had gone on a bit longer before he was arrested.
Oh, I like that. So Williams not... I mean, there's a good question about why Williams is not just running straight to the watch or whatever, to the magistrate and saying, calling this in. If he's going to try and milk it, then that's a good motivation. Like that. Elizabeth, then Eric.
Yeah, I was wondering if anyone else found the boy being brought out with the hammer still in his head funny, because it reminded me of one of the dwarves in The Hobbit. You know, there's one of them that has the axe that struck him still in his head and it's moving around. I can't remember his name. But I just thought it really almost jarred with the tone of the text so far. So I think so far it's been quite serious, and it's been, the goriness and the bloodiness has been quite scary. And Mary's been quite a scary character. But that one I found laugh out loud funny.
Well, I mean, it obviously me saying it in a very bold way was designed to lighten the tone of what I'm sure it could be done very, very effectively. I mean, we were saying last time, effectively the murders were being done sort of off stage, not fully in sight. So this, presumably they've had time to do some sort of make-up job on the boy while he's been off stage. So it could be incredibly effective and quite distressing, especially if the boy's groaning or making noises or whatever. I mean, this could be horrific. Or not. It could be funny. There is always that dangerous balancing act with something like this. Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's also that thing of like CSI. Well, as you said in the chat, it's like CSI Neighbours kind of thing, where it's the neighbors that take on the whole. Obviously, might be like some sort of I don't know, like neighborhood watch type thing, or maybe, but it just made me think like they're leaving the hammer in to figure out the angle of attack and like whether the guy is left-handed or right-handed and so on.
Yeah, I mean they're very practical about looking for signs of murder. Obviously they don't know about fingerprints yet and other things like that, but they do know the basic things to look for. Lots of blood, and Fourth Neighbour is really clearly very efficient, and the way that Merry sort of repeats what he said, even though he wasn't in the room, but the way that Merry before, as everyone is exiting, sort of going, yeah, you all go and do stuff, yeah, that's what you should, rake kennels, gutters, seek, and then lets it all fade and talks to the audience. Hopefully they won't suspect me because look, I was saying I was going to lead the hunt kind of thing. Which does happen again also with real murders of people involved trying to confuse the police by pretending to be a concerned neighbour or similar. Okay, any other thoughts before we... lots of thoughts still. Helen, then Eric.
My thought is about the next scene. It's a warning. But if Eric's got something about this previous scene.
You have a warning from the. Well, I mean, we've got
sorry,
someone.
This is not. It is not a warning about the content. Merry turns up in Padua. I'm sure he shouldn't.
Right. Does he?
Yes, the last line has been ascribed to Merry. Can we sort that out before we?
Oh, it must be a murderer then.
And hit it nose on.
It's a good point. Yeah, say first murderer says it. For the moment, and we'll see which fits best. Eric.
I was just going to say the whole bit about the 6 wounds were mortal except the last one. I'm guessing that's what they mean, right? Basically, like the 6 wounds could have killed him, but then,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah, that's a really
mortal
odd one.
wounds and incurable, and then except one. Like I would have thought it's the other way around. Isn't like six of them, like he would have survived 6 of them, and then the last one is the mortal one.
I'd rather assumed it was the other way around. The first one was a glancing blow, but the others, any of the other subsequent ones would have.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, let's fly off to Padua, where I'm sure happier things are happening. Different murder plot. Act 2, Scene 5. Enter Fallerio, Sostrata, Allenso, Pertillo, and 2 murderers booted.
Now, little coz, you are content to go from me, your uncle and your loving aunt, your faithful cousin and your dearest friends, and all to come to be a skillful man in learned arts and happy sciences.
I am content because it pleaseth you. My father bid I should obey your will and yield myself to your discretion. Besides, my cousin gave me yesternight a pretty nag to ride to Padua. Of all my friends, Allenso loves me best.
I think thou art inspired with prophecy. He loves thee better than I would he did. Why, wherefore think you so, my pretty nephew?
Because he taught me how to say my prayers, to ride a horse, to start the fearful hare. He gave this dagger to me yesternight, this little ring, and many pretty things, for which, kind coz, I rest your true debtor, and one day I will make you recompense.
Aye, with thy lands and goods thou leavest behind.
Pray, father, let me go along with him. Now, by the Saviour of my sinful soul, I do not like those fellows' countenance.
Son, be content. We'll go a 7-night hence and see him in his university weeds. These will conduct him safely to the place. Be well assured, they'll have a care of him, that you shall never see Pertillo more.
Father, I pray you to withdraw yourself. I'd have a word or two in secrecy.
And they speak together.
Living image of thy dead mother, and take my loving farewell ere we part. I love thee dearly for thy father's sake, but for thy mother's dote with jealousy. Oh, I do fear before I see thy face, or thou or I shall taste of bitterness. Kiss me, sweet boy, and kissing, fold thine aunt within the circle of thy little arms. I need not fear, death cannot offer wrong. The majesty of thy presaging face would vanquish him, though ne'er so terrible. The angry lioness that is bereaved of an imperious crew of forest kings would leave her fury and defend thee safe from wolves, from panthers, leopards, and she-bears that live by rapine, stealth, and cruelty. Therefore to God I do commend thy state, who will be sure to guard thee tenderly. And now to you that carry hence this wealth, this precious jewel, this unprized good, have a regard to use him carefully when he is parted from that serious care which was employed for his security. I urge it not that I misdoubt your truth. I hope his uncle doth persuade himself you will be courteous, kind, and affable. There's some reward for hoped carefulness.
Now, by my soul, I do suspect the men, especially the lower of the two. See what a hollow, discontented look he casts, which brings apparent cause of fear. The other, though he seem more courteous, yet doth his looks presage this thought in me, as if he scorned to think on courtesy.
Upon my life, my son, you are to blame. The gentlemen are honest, virtuous, and will protect Pertillo happily. These thoughts proceed out of abundant love because you grieve to leave his company. If aught betide him, otherwise than well, let God require due vengeance on my head, and cut my hopes from all prosperity.
A heavy sentence full of wondrous fear. I cannot choose but credit such a vow. Come hither then, my joy, my chiefest hopes, my second self, my earthly happiness. Lend me thy little pretty cherry lip to kiss me, cousin. Lay thy little hand upon my cheek and hug me tenderly. Would the clear rays of thy two glorious suns could penetrate the corners of my heart, that thou might see how much I tender thee. My friends, behold, within this little bulk, two perfect bodies are incorporate. His life holds mine, his heart contains my heart, his every limb contains my every part. Without his being I can never be. He being dead, prepare to bury me. O thou immortal mover of the spheres, within their circled revolutions, whose glorious image this small orphan bears, wrought by thy all-sufficient majesty, O never suffer any wicked hand to harm this heavenly workmanship of thine, but let him live, great God, to honour thee with virtuous life and spotless piety.
Cease, my kind coz. I cannot choose but weep to see your care of my security.
Knewest thou my reason that persuades my heart, thou wouldst not wonder why I grieve to part. But yet I would suspect my father's vow, did any other make it by your leave.
Oh, sugar, I'm sorry. Is it me?
It is. What have you done?
I've touched my screen and it's whizzed back to the top of the play.
Someone give Helen a page.
30.
30.
Right.
What have you done this loathness to depart?
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about this.
That's all right. I'll trim it out later.
Got it. What have you done? This loathness to depart seems you were trained up in tediousness that knows not when and where to make an end. Take him, my friends. I know you will discharge the hope and trust that I repose in you.
Assure yourself.
Assure yourself in every circumstance.
Then to your horses quickly, speedily, else we shall put our finger in the eye and weep for kindness till tomorrow morn.
Farewell, good uncle, aunt, and loving coz.
And Sostrata kisseth the boy weeping.
Farewell. I fear me everlastingly.
And exeunt Sostrata and Allenso, one of the murderers, takes Fallerio by the sleeve.
You mean not now to have him murdered?
Not murdered? What else? Kill him, I say. But wherefore makest thou question of my will?
Because you wish that God should be revenged if any ill betide the innocent.
Oh, that was nothing but to blind the eyes of my fond son, which loves him too well.
It is enough. It shall be surely done.
And they exit. So we've got a sort of sense of anticipation building in Padua of things. People being got out of the way, so that the little one can be murdered. I love the way the murderer goes. You mean him not to have him murdered? No, kill him. just getting it right. Get the let's not rush this. Don't want to end up with hitting someone over the head 15 times with a hammer. I've heard about this thing in London. I mean, you've got to organise these things properly. Lois.
Yeah, well, it also draws our attention to the horrible curse he's called down on himself, which I suspect is going to come true somehow.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? Maybe you'll get away scot-free. Actually, we heard the prologue, so we've got a pretty good idea where this is going. There's no spoilers here, by the way, people. Helen.
Fallerio is surrounded by sentimental idiots.
That's how
I
he
mean,
can
there's
bustle
his
so well.
wife. There's his wife. Yes, there's his wife drooling over the sprog. His son seems to have developed an unnatural affection for him. I mean, he really was way over the top there. And then the murderers start going soft. I mean, the poor man. He's got to have a backbone for everybody. Sorry, I always identify with the people I'm reading. I had trouble with Mary, a lot of trouble.
Sympathy for the devils there. Rachael, then Eric.
No, just the structure of the last few scenes. It reminds me of the prologues that we kind of got, where we have these vice characters and then the truth comes out. So we have all these pretending in these scenes, and then it's like at the last, couple beats, we have, just like, no, do it. This is what I actually meant. All this other stuff is just a ruse that I've put on to keep people off my trail.
Eric, then Lynn, are you waving or just, yeah?
I was just going to mention that it's interesting how sort of basically, Fallerio is like, I'm surrounded by imbeciles. You can imagine him saying that sort of, but then this is supposed to be a serious play. So it's kind of like, are we just establishing the IQ of the murderers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question about tone, and how seriously we're supposed to take it. I mean, if we take the opening sort of induction seriously, and what truth says, look for no mirth unless you take delight in mangled bodies and in gaping wounds. So I don't think there is supposed to be actually that much in the way of deliberate humour. So, part of our job is to be careful about managing any potential laughs that we're getting from the audience. Because there almost certainly will be some, and some of them, will be fine. But you've got to be careful with this one, because if you let them off the leash, then all this murder could be hilarious fun. Lynn.
Yes, well, I'm not reading Fallerio today, so perhaps I have a little bit different take on it than Helen. I mean, I feel like what was going on here was not so much that everybody else is soft. It was like, I think we're trying to generate sympathy for the poor child who's about to be murdered. His aunt loves him, and his cousin really loves him, and it kind of, I think Fallerio kind of comes off as a heartless bastard in this scene. Like shut up and leave already. Yikes. Or was it like you don't know when to make an end. Basically, you don't know when to stop talking. Like, ooh.
Alan, then Rachael, and then we'll move on.
I don't see how this could be played straight. I mean, I don't think a modern audience would take this as anything other than farce.
I know. I don't see there's anything farcical about this. I mean, it is about how you do it. But I mean, we've been talking about how it's so similar to modern day, CSI kind of situations and modern day murder things. It's not like Arden in that sense. None of these people are so far the same kind of incompetence being played out. I mean, if there's something you can identify that is farcical, then yes, absolutely. But I don't see anything that is structurally doing the work of farce.
I mean, the whole setup. I mean, the two parallel plots, I think, for a start off, which takes it into a strange area as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think a modern audience could take this seriously.
Rachael.
I was just about to say something about the tone, and I don't know if it's farcical, but yesterday it was reminding me of a show like Mindhunter or like Silence of the Lambs, and it seems so psychological. And today, it's a little more like Hammer horror, or like the ones that Christopher Lee was in. as Dracula, or on an extreme side, Andy Warhol as Frankenstein. But that's a little further than I think this one goes. But yeah, there's a little, I feel like unintentionally funny bits in this because of, the hammer sticking out. Just the effects of that is so extreme and not in line with, I guess, the natural human behavior.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, just speaking to what Rachel just said, I really agree with you. I think that this scene builds suspense and builds a lot of tension. I know Allenso is really over the top with how much he loves Pertillo, but he knows that Pertillo's life is in danger because Fallerio has already told him essentially that he wants to kill him, and so that might be, informing a bit of his reactions to parting with Pertillo. But then there's also this sense that I like that there's a little bit of dark humor, a bit of black humor in the text, which is, definitely reminiscent of those Hammer horror narratives. And I don't agree with you, Alan, that it's farcical, but it could be read that way. I think it definitely could be read that way by a modern audience.
Lois.
Yeah, I was thinking that one way that the Anselmo could play that speech would be as a kind of warning to his father. I love this child so much that if he were to die, I would probably die too, and I am your only heir after all.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential there, but we need to move on. Remember, we've only done a couple of relatively short scenes so far today. We've got a lot more action to do. We're going to run the next next couple of sections together because we sort of cross the act barrier with an interesting time jump. Possibly happening live. I haven't quite figured this bit out yet. Anyway, Act 2, Scene 6. Enter Mary and Rachael with a bag.
What? Hast thou sped? Have you brought the bag?
Aye, brother, here it is. What is it to do?
To bear hence bitch's body in the night.
You cannot bear so great a weight yourself, and it is no trusting of another man.
Yes, well enough, as I will order it. I'll cut him piecemeal. First his head and legs will be one burthen, then the mangled rest will be another, which I will transport beyond the water in a ferryboat and throw it into Paris Garden ditch. Fetch me the chopping knife, and in the mean I'll move the faggots that to cover him.
And he starts removing the faggots.
Can you find it hard to cut and carve his stone-cold flesh and rob the greedy grave of his discovered blood-besprinkled limbs?
Aye, marry can I. Fetch the chopping knife.
This deed is worse than when you took his life.
And exit Rachael.
But worse or better, now it must be so. Better to do thus than feel a greater woe.
Re-enter Rachael. That should be Rachel's dialogue there.
Here is the knife. I cannot stay to see this barbarous deed of inhumanity.
And exit Rachael again. Mary begins to cut the body and binds the arms behind his back with Beech's garters. Leaves out the body, covers the head and legs again. Doesn't exit, enter Truth.
Ye glorious beams of that bright shining lamp that lights the star-bespangled firmament and dims the glimmering shadows of the night. Why dost thou lend assistance to this wretch to shamble forth with bold audacity his limbs that bear thy Maker's semblance? All you, the sad spectators of this act, whose hearts do taste a feeling pensiveness of this unheard of savage massacre, oh, be far off to harbour such a thought and this audacious murder put in your. I see your sorrows flow up to the brim and overflow your cheeks with brinish tears. But though this sight brings surfeit to the eye, delight your ears with pleasing harmony, that ears may countercheck your eyes and say, why shed you tears? This deed is but a play. His work is done. He seeks to hide his sin. I'll wail his woe before his woe begin.
So, exit truth, Merry, having completed his actions listed earlier. Act 3, Scene 1.
Now will I hie me to the waterside and fling this heavy burden in a ditch, whereof my soul doth feel so great a weight that it doth almost press me down with fear.
Re-enter Rachael.
Hark, Rachael, I will cross the water straight, and fling this middle mention of a man into some ditch. Then hie me home again, to rid my house of that is left behind.
Where have you laid the legs and battered head?
Under the faggots where it lay before. Help me to put this trunk into the bag.
My heart will not endure to handle it. The sight thereof doth make me quake for fear.
I'll do it myself. Only dry up the blood, and burn the clothes as you have done before.
And exit Merry.
I fear thy soul will burn in flames of hell, unless repentance wash away thy sin with cleansing tears of true contrition. Did not nature oversway my will, this world should know this plot of damned ill.
And exit Rachael. Again, very short scene, but it's the way it crosses the act barrier. That he's disposing of this body while truth is talking about how awful it is. There's something really sustained about the logistics of what happens after a murder that's really interesting about what this is doing. Lois.
It's sort of interesting. There's a pun on act, I think. I mean, Truth says something about, you've watched this act and you don't know whether it means dismembering the body or we're coming to the end of the second act.
And in fact, even the act division might be slightly out of... I may have moved it a few lines. The script is slightly irregular in places, but I made sure it definitely ended at the end of Truth there, so I think it might be actually a few lines further on when it actually says that. It's very weirdly structured, this text at times. Rachael?
No, that's what I wanted to ask about that Truth bit, and if anybody else, is this... is Truth here meant to be acting as a chorus? They're Merry and Rachael are on stage doing this scene, and they're there, acting as Truth is there acting as a chorus.
It seems to be, yeah. That we had them as a Truth and Murder and Avarice at the beginning as an inductive sort of chorus, and they're turning up at the sort of in-between acts. So it seems to be that. It also covers the fact that presumably it takes Merry a while to chop the body up. Lois?
Yeah, I just wondered about the Truth saying, delight yourselves with pleasing harmony after all this. Does that mean, they did have music between the acts, but is there going to be music while he chops the body? Hi-ho, hi-ho.
Well, it's a really good question as to the auspice of the play. Because we've been sort of talking about the time when the play comes about. It's a really good question as to what kind of company would be producing it, of which we don't have any definitive answers. Elizabeth.
Speaking of music while they chop up the body, I was thinking of Sweeney Todd. It's the only other play I've seen where they have the kind of cutting up of the bodies on stage, and it's kind of a sense of heightened melodrama. But it is edging into the sense of black humor here. I think it's very difficult for them to act the cutting up of this corpse and hiding the body parts without it being a little bit funny.
I don't know. I thought it was horrible. It was horrid. I genuinely didn't find it funny at all. I'm very open to the occasional comedy moments, but there's something about this and the way actually Rachael and Merry's dialogue functions as well at this point. There doesn't seem to be an in. With all of these things, anything heightened potentially can get a laugh, but that doesn't. Yeah. I don't think structurally there's anything in this text that is inherently doing that.
Humorous.
And we've got to be really careful about that because it's a very slippery slope to slip down. Lynn, then Rachael.
Yeah, I was basically going to say something like what you were just observing, Rob, that in performance, somebody's going to laugh, even if you really try to play up the actual genuine horror of this moment. The discomfort is going to make some of your audience giggle. So managing that is a challenge, maybe.
Rachael, then Helen.
No, to what, in response to Elizabeth, because this definitely made me think of Rocky Horror, and I think there's, I think it depends a little bit on the effects and the acting and stuff and that campiness, and maybe we could, you could have humor in there, or it could be serious, but I feel like with productions like this, there's a lot of energy in the audience, and even if it's not humor or disgusting, sometimes it's just that roller coaster thrill ride that horror movies or horror productions give.
Helen.
Yeah, I knew a production of a different play where there was a particularly gruesome and horrible moment, and they had to work very hard because always someone in the audience giggled. And they solved it by one of the characters not actually doing the horror, but witnessing it on the stage giggled. And that shut the audience up. So if Rachael has gives a nervous giggle, it might well work.
Or Mary. Just thinking about the tortured problem we have with Mary's psychology.
He doesn't strike me as the nervous giggler, but you may be right.
One for the actor. Eric, and then we will move on.
I was gonna say I'm just wondering whether this is actually like a hint towards like the Mary's build, because for one thing, he's like, okay, he's not actually like physically moving the entire body, but to cut up a body after death, like rigor mortis would have set in, blah blah blah, even if it's fresh. I know that I speak from experience. Like cutting through bone and all that stuff with a chopping knife, he must have been like quite sort of strong and like well built and sort of all that stuff.
Yeah, he's done an awful lot of this work single-handed. He's only had her assistants getting him down the stairs. That's it. Because I think she took the feet. But then she said, you're on your own, in terms of piling him underneath the wood pile. So anyway, we now have a long scene to go. So we're going to run this straight through because we're actually also taking a long time going over some quite short scenes. So Act 3, Scene 2. Enter the two murderers with Pertillo.
I am so weary in this cumbrous wood that I must needs go sit me down and rest.
What were we best, to kill him unawares, or give him notice what we do intend?
Why then be like you mean to do your charge and feel no taste of pity in your heart?
Pity, man? That never enters here. And if it should, I'd threat my craven heart to stab it home for harboring such a thought. I see no reason why I should relent. It is a charitable, virtuous deed to end this princock from the sinful world.
Such charity will never have reward unless it be with sting of conscience, and that's a torment worse than Sisyphus, that rolls a restless stone against the hill.
My conscience is not pricked with such conceit.
That shows thee further off from hope and grace.
Grace me no graces. I respect no grace. But with a grace to give a graceless stab, to chop folks' legs and arms off by the stumps to see what shift they'll make to scramble home, pick out men's eyes and tell them that's the sport of hoodman blind, without all sportiveness. If with a grace I can perform such pranks, my heart will give mine agents many thanks.
Well, then God forbid I should consort myself with one so far from grace and piety, lest being found within thy company I should be partner of thy punishment.
When we have done what we have vowed to do, my heart desires to have no fellowship with those that talk of grace or godliness. I name not God unless 'twere with an oath, since the first hour that I could walk alone. And you that make so much of conscience, by heaven, thou art a damned hypocrite, for thou hast vowed to kill that sleeping boy, and all to gain 200 marks in gold. I know this pureness comes of pure deceit, to draw me from the murdering of the child, that you alone might have the benefit. You are too shallow. If you gull me so, chop off my head to make a sousing tub and fill it full of tripes and chitterlings.
That thou shalt see my heart is far from fraud or vain illusion in this enterprise, which doth import the safety of our souls. There, take my earnest of impiety.
And gives him his money.
Only forbear to lay thy rude hands upon this poor mistrustless tender child. As for our vows, fear not their violence. God will forgive on hearty penitence.
Oh, thou eunuch, capon, dastard, fast and loose, thou weathercock of mutability, white-livered peasant, wilt thou vow and swear, face and make semblance with thy bagpipe oaths of that thou never meanst to execute? Pure cowardice, for fear to crack thy neck with the huge chaos of thy body's weight, hath sure begot this true contrition. Then fast and pray, and see if thou canst win a goodly pardon for thy heinous sin. As for the boy, this fatal instrument was marked by heaven to cut his line of life, and must supply the knife of Atropos. And if it do not, let this masterpiece, which nature lent the world to wonder at, be slit in carbonados for the jaws of some man-eating hungry cannibal. By heaven, I'll kill him only for this cause, for that he came of virtuous ancestors.
But by that God, which made that wondrous globe wherein is seen his powerful deity, thou shalt not kill him, maugre all thy spite. Swear and forswear thyself 10,000 times. Await, Pertillo, for thou art betrayed. This bloody slave intends to murder thee.
And they draw both.
Both him and all that dare to rescue him.
Wherefore, because I slept without your leave, forgive my fault, I'll never sleep again.
No, child, thy wicked uncle hath suborned both him and me to take thy life away, which I would save, but that this hellish imp will not content to spare thy guiltless blood.
Why should Fallerio seek to have my life?
The lands and goods thy father left his son do hail thee to thy destruction.
Oh, needy treasure, harm begetting good, that safety should procure the loss of blood.
Those lands and goods thy father got with pain are swords wherewith his little son is slain.
Then let our swords let out his guiltless life.
Sweet, sour, kind, cruel, hold thy murdering knife and hear me speak before you murder me.
Fear not, sweet child, he shall not murder thee.
No, but my sword shall let his puddings forth.
First, hear me speak, thou map of butchery. 'Tis but my goods and lands my uncle seeks. Having that safely, he desires no more. I do protest by my dead parent's soul, by the dear love of false Falerius' son, whose heart, my heart assures me, will be grieved to hear his father's inhumanity. I will forsake my country goods and lands, I, and myself will even change myself, in name, in life, in habit, and in all, and live in some far-moved continent. So you will spare my weak and tender youth, which cannot entertain the stroke of death in budding years and very spring of life.
Leave off your bootless protestations, and use no ruth-enticing arguments, for if you do, I'll lop you limb by limb and torture you for childish eloquence.
Thou shalt not make his little finger ache.
Yes, every part, and this shall prove it true.
And runs Pertillo in with his sword.
Oh, I am slain. The Lord forgive thy fact, and give thee grace to die with penitence.
And Pertillo dies.
A treacherous villain, and full of cowardice, I'll make thee know that thou hast done amiss.
Teach me that knowledge when you will or dare.
And they fight and kill one another, the relenter having some more life and the other dieth.
Swoon, I'm peppered. I need have salt, or else tomorrow I shall yield a stink worse than a heap of dirty excrements. Now, by this hilt, this gold was earned too dear. Ah, how now, death, wilt thou be conqueror? Then vengeance light on them that made me so. And there's another farewell ere I go.
And stabs the other murderer again.
Enough! Enough! I had my death before.
And a hunt within. We'll very briefly pause there before the hunt enters. So yes, we have that traditional thing, and by now I think we can safely say it's quite traditional. We've had it in quite a few plays by the mid-1590s of one of the murderers has a sudden change of conscience. Oh no, the boy's quite nice. Let's not. I will give you all my money to not kill the boy. First murderer, no, he's really quite keen on their job. Really very keen on the job. Second murderer drew his sword, wasn't paying enough attention. Pertillo still gets stabbed. Briony.
I've been hanging back a bit with the comments today because I'm trying to settle into it, having not been here yesterday. But I don't really. He's not very likable, is he? He's a bit of a wet lettuce. Maybe it's just because I inherently find the bad guys more appealing, but he's asking to be murdered a little bit. Is he narcoleptic? He's like, oh, I need a rest, and instantly falls asleep, which is a bit strange. And I love the line about making his puddings come out.
Yeah, there are some nice lines in this. It has to be said. I do like Pertillo just going, Why are you going to kill me because I slept without your leave? I mean, it's just like, you're right. Wet lettuce is a good description of the lad. How old is Pertillo, actually? I forget from yesterday. Anyone here, did we get an accurate age?
Pre-teen, I think.
Yeah, so he's quite young. So this is sort of child murdery territory here. It's not like he's a young adult and maybe has developed a personality. His parents have also both just died. In relatively recent times, so a bit traumatized, but yeah. So
I think that thing about you'll kill me because I slept when you told me not to or didn't give me permission to. I don't know. Given the way children were treated, I think that's a perfectly reasonable conjecture.
I also love the second murderer just going, you don't need to stab me. The first stab was enough. There's been a few moments in this where, yes, it seems like there is a bit more of a mingling of a potential comic action, but also there's something nicely matter of fact about the way some of those are doing things. It's quite interesting about how that would function. That's one I want to test on an audience. I don't think we can come to conclusions about what this scene is entirely doing here. Lynn, then Rachael.
Something that's I find striking about this scene, especially in combination with the previous scene in this thread, the departure scene, is kind of how drawn out they are. They really take longer than they need to advance the plot. So there's something very different going on in the Italian murder thread than there is in the London murder thread, where things are happening very quickly. The murder gets done very soon in that narrative arc, and then we keep kind of putting this off and dragging it out. So I don't know what to make of that, but the pacing, the arc is very differently shaped between the two. So we're drawing this out to get more sentiment, more emotion out of it. Kind of.
Yeah, because in London it's not been 5 minutes. It's only 5 minutes before someone gets his hammer in the head. Whereas here we're in Act 3 and the murder has only just happened, and they've done a lot of long speechifying to get there. It sounds very different. Rachael, then Lois, then Eric.
No, how Alan before was saying this is like farcical. I still think this is super campy, but I was wondering with this scene, because this is so over the top, and I guess you could play it for dark comedy. If that opening bit where Avarice and Homicide like hug each other, if it's like a frenemies type situation, and Truth's coming in and saying, like what we had in The Virtuous and Godly Susanna, that it's like, some of this is played for comedy, but underneath it's super grim. And the serious moments you'll get is from Truth coming in and saying, okay, you got to stop laughing now. We're serious here. This is being serious.
And we have just killed a child, so it's always just to remind everyone that. Lois, then Eric, then Elizabeth.
Well, it's pretty formulaic, really. I mean, you were saying that about the two murderers, that if there are two murderers, this is pretty much the way they always go. And it's the same, really, with the children. I mean, most of the children in drama from this period get murdered. I mean, they're sort of there to die pathetically. And I take it that this must have been a surefire thing for audiences, pathetic kids pleading for their lives.
And which brings us to the warning that Oscar Wilde gives us about Little Nell. It's a very effective thing, but also maybe it's just one step away from laughter. Eric, then Elizabeth.
I was going to say that, first of all, it's interesting that Pertillo has that line, "Thou map of butchery," because it's like, there's a part of me going, is the first murder just doubling with Mary? Because that would be a very quick costume change, but Mary has just sort of, maybe murdered and sliced up someone. So, yeah, I don't know. It just made me think like, oh, there's a callback to the previous scene. Whoa, what's going on here? Yeah, and I can't remember what my second point was.
Yeah, it's an interesting question about parallels between the two plots as well. Last time we were quite struck by how they were echoing each other quite a lot, whereas I don't think this plot can yet. Maybe about to do some echoing, because we're now going from the murder element to the covering up element and the discovery element. So we may get more of that in a moment. Elizabeth, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I was really liking the points that were made about Homicide and Avarice. I thought of them as like Aziraphale and Crowley from Good Omens by Terry Pratchett. But I also really like the fact that the murderers don't agree to do that murder, and that even though they both went there to do it, one of them changes his mind. And that, I think, speaks to Pertillo being less pathetic but more sweet. I found him quite a sweet and endearing child. And the fact that one of the murderers doesn't want to kill him also adds to that fact. I love the fact that he says he would give up all his land, all his name, everything, and just go and be someone else. And that kind of, that last moment to hopefully redeem him makes his death even more kind of sad.
Yes, it is something about him that everyone responds to, apart from Fallerio, because Allenso obviously really, really likes Pertillo, and so yeah, there must be something there. Challenge for the actor there, whichever young person ends up playing him. Okay, we're still halfway through a scene. There is a hunt. Or something similar. A hunt within. Enter the Duke of Padua, Turqualo, Vesuvio, Alberto, etc.
Now, my lords, was not a gallant course. Believes me, sirs, I never saw a wretch make better shift to save her little life. The thickets full of busks and scratching briars, a mighty dew, a many deep-mouthed hounds let loose in every place to cross their course, and yet the hare got cleanly from them all. I would not for £100 in faith, but that she had escaped with her life. For we will wind a merry hunter's home and start her once again tomorrow morn.
In troth, my lord, the little flocked hound that had but 3 good legs to further him was foremost still and surer of his scent than any in all the cry besides.
But yet Pendragon gave the hare more turns.
That was because he was more politic and eyed her closely in her covered stall. They all did well, and once more we will try the subtle creature with a greater cry.
But say what well-accomplished gentleman is that comes into our company?
I know him well. It is Fallerio's son. Pandino's brother, a kind gentleman, that died and left his little pretty son unto his brother's good direction.
Stand close a while and overhear his words. He seems much overgone with passion.
Ye timorous thoughts that guide my giddy steps in unknown paths of dreadful wilderness, why traitor-like do you conspire to hold my pained heart twixt fear and jealousy? My too much care hath brought me carelessly into this woody savage labyrinth, and I can find no way to issue out. Fear hath so dazzled all my better part, that reason hath forgot discretion's art. But in good time, see where is company. Kind gentlemen, if you, unlike myself, are not encumbered with the circling ways of this erroneous winding wilderness, I pray you to direct me forth this wood and show the path that leads to Padua.
We all are Paduans, and we all intend to pass forthwith with speed to Padua.
I will attend upon you presently.
And they see the bodies.
Come then away, but gentlemen, behold, a bloody sight and murderous spectacle.
Oh, God forgive me all my wickedness, and take me to eternal happiness.
Hark, one of them hath some small spark of life to kindle knowledge of their sad mishaps.
Ah, gracious Lord, I know this wretched child, and these two men that here lie murdered.
Do you, Allenso?
Aye, my gracious Lord, it was Pertillo, my dead uncle's son. Now have my fears brought forth this fearful child of endless care and everlasting grief.
Lay hands upon Allenso, gentlemen. Your presence doth confirm you had a share in the performance of this cruelty.
I do confess I have so great a share in this mishap that I will give him thanks, that will let forth my sorrow-wounded soul from out this goal of lamentation.
'Tis now too late to wish for hadawist. Had you withheld your hand from this attempt, sorrow had never so imprisoned you.
Oh, my good Lord, do not mistake my case, and yet my grief is sure infallible. The Lord of heaven can witness with my soul that I am guiltless of your wrong suspect, but yet not griefless that the deed is done.
Nay, if you stand to justify yourself, this gentleman whose life doth seem to stay within his body till he tell your shame shall testify of your integrity. Speak then, thou sad anatomy of death. Who were the agents of your woefulness?
Be not blinded with a false surmise, for lest my tongue should fail to end the tale of our untimely fate appointed death. No, young Allenso is as innocent as is Fallerio guilty of the crime. He it was that with 400 marks, whereof 200 he paid presently, did hire this damned villain and myself to massacre this harmless innocent. And yet my conscience, touched with some remorse, would fain have saved the young Pertillo's life, but he, remorseless, would not let him live. But unawares thrust in his harmless breast that life-bereaving fatal instrument, which cruel deed I, seeking true revenge, have lost my life and paid the slave his due reward for spilling blood of innocence. Surprise Fallerio, author of this ill, save young Allenso. He is guiltless still.
And the second murderer finally dieth.
Oh, sweetest honey mixed with bitter gall. Oh, nightingale combined with raven's notes. Thy speech is like a woodward that should say, let the tree live, but take the root away. As though my life were aught but misery, having my father slain for infamy.
What should incite Fallerio to devise the overthrow of this unhappy boy?
That may be easily guessed, my gracious lord, to be the lands Pandino left his son, which, after that the boy were murdered, descend to him by due inheritance.
You deem aright. See, gentlemen, the fruits of coveting to have another's right. A wicked thought of greedy covetize. Could neither nature fear of punishment, scandal to wife and children, nor the fear of God confounding strict severity, allay the strong fury of thy will? Beware, my friends, to wish unlawful gain. It will beget strange actions full of fear, and overthrow the actor unawares. For first, Fallerio's life must satisfy the large effusion of their guiltless bloods, trained on by him to these extremities. Next, wife and child must be dispossessed of lands and goods, and turn to beggary. But most of all, his great and heinous sin will be an eyesore to his guiltless kin. Bear hence away these models of his shame, and let us persecute the murderer with all the care and diligence we can.
And two must be carrying away Pertillo.
Forbear a while to bear away my joy, which now is vanished since his life is fled, and give me leave to wash his deadly wound, with hearty tears outflowing from those eyes, which loved his sight more than the sight of heaven. Forgive me, God, for this idolatry. Thou ugly monster, grim imperious death, thou raw bond lump of foul deformity, regardless instrument of cruel fate, impartial sergeant full of treachery. Why did thou flatter my ill-boding thoughts, and flesh my hopes with vain illusions? Why didst thou say Pertillo should not die, and yet, oh yet, hast done it cruelly? Oh, but behold, with what a smiling cheer he entertained thy bloody harbinger. See, thou transformer of a heavenly face to ashy paleness and unpleasing looks, that his fair countenance still retaineth grace of perfect beauty in the very grave. The world would say such beauty should not die, yet like a thief thou didst it cruelly. Ah, had thy eyes, deep sunk into thy head, been able to perceive his virtuous mind, where virtue sat enthroned in a chair, with awful grace and pleasing majesty, thou wouldest not then have let Pertillo die, nor like a thief have slain him cruelly. Inevitable fates could you devise, no means to bring me to this pilgrimage, full of great woes and sad calamities. But that the father should be principal to plot the present downfall of the son? Come then, kind death, and give me leave to die, since thou hast slain Pertillo cruelly.
Forbear, Allenso, hearken to my doom, which doth concern thy father's apprehension. First we enjoin thee, upon pain of death, to give no succor to thy wicked sire, but to let him perish in his damned sin, and pay the price of such a treachery. See that with speed the monster be attached, and bring him safe to suffer punishment. Prevent it not, nor seek not to delude the officers to whom this charge is given. For if thou do, as sure as God doth live, thyself shall satisfy the law's contempt. Therefore forward about this punishment.
And exit the Duke, etc. Allenso remains.
Thanks, gracious God, that thou hast left the means to end my soul from this perplexity. Not succor him on the pain of present death. That is no pain. Death is a welcome guest to those whose hearts are overwhelmed with grief. My woes are done. I having leave to die, and after death live ever joyfully.
Exit Allenso. Enter Murder and Avarice.
Now, Avarice, I have well satisfied my hungry thoughts with blood and cruelty. Now all my melancholy discontent is shaken off, and I am thoroughly pleased with what thy policy hath brought to pass. Yet am I not so thoroughly satisfied until I bring the purple actors forth, and cause them quaff a bowl of bitterness, that father, son, and sister, brother may bring to their deaths with most assured decay.
That will be done without all question, for thou hast slain Allenso with the boy. And Rachael doth not wish to overlive the sad remembrance of her brother's sin. Leave faithful love to teach them how to die, that they may share their kinfolk's misery.
Yeah, they're not all dead yet, but more deaths surely to come there, Murder. Looking forward to some more additional things as we close Act 3. Yeah, it's bodies discovered, and second murderer wasn't dead. No, the coup de grace was stabbed. Enough. I had my death before, but he didn't die at that moment. The person stabbing him died. The stage directions were not desperately clear, but now we have resolved them. Duke, really, yeah, severe Duke there. Hanging judge again there. No succor to your father. Don't help him at all. Thoughts from the room? Anyone wants to leap in? Lynn.
Yeah, speaking of dragging things out, it's like, I'm dying over here. You guys need to shut up. I'll sit down before I bleed out.
Yeah, they turn away from the second murderer says, and then they go, hang on, we just have to clear up some plot points over here. We'll be back with you in a minute. You'll stay alive for that long, won't you? Yes, you will. Yes, I quite agree that that's a weird moment. Yeah. Second murderer, just exaggerating there. Other thoughts, Rachael?
No, I wonder what this playwright is trying to do with Allenso and Pertillo, because the washing with the tears, it sounds so Mary Magdalene, from some of those plays that what do you call it? Was it the York Cycle? Or no, we did a play called Mary Magdalene.
We've done Mary Magdalene. There's lots of washing with tears.
But that's what this makes me think of. That it, is there supposed to be something more to this relationship, or something more to Allenso's feelings that are, I guess, not entirely familial?
Well, I hope not. He's with a child.
Oh, I didn't know there.
Yeah, because Pertillo is quite young. But yeah, they seem to definitely be, But then I'm not sure precisely how old Allenso is. So there's an interesting question as to their relationship. It's a good question about the relationship because he really does lay it on thick. As in fact everything Allenso has done has been laid on with a trowel. It seems to be a very Allenso thing. Lynn, did you want to come back again?
Yeah, but Allenso does say, "Forgive me this idolatry." So there is that sort of religious resonance there as well. So yes, I think his attachment to his little cousin is supposed to be really pure. And speaking of his Allenso's age, he has to be old enough that the Duke would suspect him of being the murderer. So he can't be also like 8 or 10. That would make less sense.
Alan?
I think from context, although I can't point to the line, I think Allenso I would put somewhere around 12, 13. So potentially criminally responsible.
Any other thoughts on ages we'll throw in at some point. Helen, then Eric, then I think Rachael might want to step back in again.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel's just said in the comment that she was thinking Pertillo was sort of 18, 20. I must say I'd definitely put him at, not Pertillo, sorry, Allenso. Yeah, Allenso, the thing is, he is old enough to be traveling all on his own in whatever part of the forest this murder takes place. I mean, what he's actually doing there isn't really resolved.
Yeah.
Whereas
he's traveling alone.
Whereas Pertillo has to be young just simply because he hasn't inherited the estate, so he has to be of a reasonably young age.
Well, he has to be under 21, but
yeah. Could Allenso be?
I think he's younger than that.
Part of the hunt.
No.
No. Okay.
No.
He's going
No.
to university, so he's probably about 12 or 13, isn't he? I think that's about when people went. I mean, it was quite young.
Yes, and the more richer and more noble you were, the younger you went.
Eric.
I was just going to draw attention back to because it's Allenso that says, "Forgive me this idolatry," right? And but then the actual like mentions of non non-Christian myth are basically done by the murderers, which is, I don't know, is just a bit interesting. And also, like, we still get echoes of sort of other myths and echoes of like the previous scene in like the first murder, going, you know, to chop our folks' arms and legs off by the stumps and so on. It's just sort of, it's very graphic, although we've already seen someone doing that. It's like, we don't really need a description, thank you very much. But I mean, yeah.
Lois, then Rachael.
Yeah, with a different dramatist, I might think that stuff about the hunt and, you know, the little animal trying to get away and fighting for its life and so on was casting a sort of poetic effect over the scene we've just had.
I thought that was absolutely what he was trying to do. It's placed right at the beginning of the scene, immediately, of that section of the scene. I think that's... This text does seem to be layering in ironies and things like that throughout.
Well, the funny thing about it is that they were so impressed by the hare or whatever it was that they were delighted it got away, but then they're going to hunt it again tomorrow with an even bigger pack of hounds and presumably kill it. So it's an interesting sort of reflection on the world of the play, really.
Rachael, then we will need to move on.
No, I thought before that he was older because was it Thomas of Woodstock where they were hiding the king's age from him so that he couldn't get his thing? So I thought it was that type of thing, like there was more immediacy. But now I wonder if it's just looking at his cousin like an older brother type figure and idolizing in that way, like that's the type of man that he wants to be, or this is his younger cousin. I'm still confused about their ages.
Okay. Well, we'll remain confused until the text gives us some more clues. But we're going to go into Act 4, Scene 1, and we're in fact going to run several scenes back to back as they all sort of run into each other because we're heading back to London, where the speeches are shorter and the action more brutal. So, Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Mary and Rachael uncovering the head and legs.
I have bestowed a watery funeral on the half-body of my butchered friend. The head and legs I'll leave in some dark place. I care not if they find them, yea or no.
Where do you mean to leave the head and legs?
In some dark place, near Baynard Castle.
But do it closely that you not be seen, for all this while you are without suspect.
Take you not thought? I'll have a care of that. Only take heed you have a special care to make no show of any discontent, nor use too many word to anyone.
Puts on his cloak, taketh up the bag.
I will return when I have left my load. Be merry, Rachael. Half the fear is past.
And exit Mary.
But I shall never think myself secure. This deed would trouble my quiet soul to think thereof so much more to see it done. Such cruel deeds can never long be hid. Although we practice near so cunningly, that others open what I do conceal. Lo, he is my brother, I will cover it, and rather die than have it spoken rife. Lo, where she goes, betrayed her brother's life.
And exit Rachael. Act 4, Scene 2. Enter Williams and Cowley.
Why, how now, Harry? What should be the cause that you are grown so discontent of late? Your sighs do show some inward heaviness. Your heavy looks, your eyes brimful of tears, bears testimony of some grief. Reveal it, Harry. I will be thy friend and help thee to my poor ability.
If I am heavy, if I often sigh, and if my eyes bear records of my woe, condemn me not, for I have mighty cause, more than I will impart to anyone.
Do you misdoubt me, that you dare not tell that woe to me that moves your discontent?
God, Master Cowley, you were ever kind, but pardon me, I will not utter it to anyone, for I have passed my word, and therefore urge me not to tell my grief.
But those that smother grief too secretly may waste themselves in silent anguishment, and bring their bodies to so low an ebb that all the world can never make it flow unto the happy height of former health. Then be not so injurious to thyself, and waste thy strength in lamentation, but tell thy case, we'll seek some remedy.
My cause of grief is now remediless, and all the world can never lessen it then, since no means can make my sorrows less. Suffer me wail a woe which wants redress.
Let me bear a part in thy laments. I love thee not so ill, but I will moan thy heavy haps. Thou shalt not sigh alone.
Nay, if you are so curious to intrude yourself to sorrow where you have no share, I will frequent some unfrequented place where none shall hear nor see my lamentations.
And exit Williams.
And I will follow wheresoever thou go. I will be a partner of thy helpless woe.
And exit Cowley. Act 4, Scene 3. Enter Two Waterman.
Will, it's not time we should go to our boats and give attendance for this Bartholomew tide? Folks will be stirring early in the morning.
By my troth, I am indifferent whether I go or no. If a fair come, why so? If not, why so? If I have not their money, they shall have none of my labor.
But we that live by our labours must give attendance. But where lies thy boat?
At Baynard's castle stairs.
So does mine. Then let's go together.
Come, I am indifferent. I care not so much for going, but if I go with you, why so? If not, why so?
And he falls over the bag.
Blood, what rascal hath laid this in my way?
I was not very indifferent that did so. But you are so peremptory to say, why so? And why so? That everyone is glad to do you injury. But let's see, what is it?
Taking the sack by the end, one of the legs and head drops out.
Good Lord, deliver us. A man's legs and a head with many wounds.
What's that so much? I am indifferent, yet for mine own part, I understand the misery of it. If you do, why so? If not, why so?
By my troth, I understand no other mystery but this. It is a strange and very rueful sight. But prithee, what dost thou conceit of it?
In truth, I am indifferent, for if I tell you, why so? If not, why so?
If thou tell me, I'll thank thee. Therefore, I prithee, tell me.
I tell you I am indifferent. But to be plain with you, I am grieved to stumble at the hangman's budget.
At the hangman's budget? Why, this is a sack.
And to speak indifferently, it is the hangman's budget. And because he thought too much of his labor to set this head upon the bridge and the legs upon the gates, he flings them into the street for men to stumble at. But if I get him in my boat, I'll so belabor him in the stretcher that he had better be stretched in one of his own halfpenny halters. If this be a good conceit, why so? If not, why so?
Thou art deceived. This head hath many wounds, and hose and shoes remaining on the legs. Bull always strips all quartered traitors quite.
I am indifferent whether you believe me or no. These were not worth taking of, and therefore he left them on. If this be likely so, if not, why so?
Nay, then I see you grow from worse to worse. I heard last night that one near Lambert Hill was missing, and his boy was murdered. It may be this is a part of that same man. Whate'er it be, I'll bear it to that place.
Mass, I am indifferent. I'll go along with you if it be so. Why so? If not, why so?
And they exit. Act 4, Scene 4. Enter 3 neighbours knocking at Loney's door. Loney comes.
Oh, Master Loney, hear you any news? What has become of your tenant Beach?
No, truly, sir, not any news at all.
What, hath the boy recovered any speech to give us light of these suggestions that do arise upon this accident?
There is no hope he should ever recover speech. The wives do say he's ready now to leave this grievous world, full fraught with treachery.
Methinks if Beach himself be innocent, then that the murderer should not dwell far off. The hammer that is sticking in his head was borrowed of a cutler dwelling by, but he remembers not who borrowed it. He is committed that did own the hammer, but yet he stands upon his innocence, and Beach's absence causeth great suspicion.
If Beach be faulty, as I do not think, I never was so much deceived before. Oh, had you known his conversation, you would not have him in suspicion.
Devils seem saints, and in these hateful times, deceit can bear apparent signs of truth, and vice bear show of virtue's excellence.
Enter the 2 watermen.
Pray, is this Master Beach's house?
My friend, this same was Master Beach's shop. We cannot tell whether he live or no.
Know you his head, and if I show it you? Or can you tell me what hose or shoes he wear? At that same time when he forsook the shop.
What? Have you head and hose and shoes to show, and want the body that should use the same?
Behold this head, these legs, these hose and shoes, and see if they were Beach's, yea or no.
They are the same. Alas, what is become of the remainder of this wretched man?
Nay, that I know not. Only these we found, as we were coming up a narrow lane, near Baynard's castle, where we 2 did dwell, and hearing that a man was missing hence, we thought it good to bring these to this place.
Thanks, my good friends. There's something for your pains.
We are indifferent whether you give us anything or nothing, and if you had not, why so? But since you have, why so?
Leave your repining. Sir, we thank you heartily.
Farewell, good fellows.
And the
Neighbour.
watermen exit.
Neighbour, now be bold. They dwell not far that did this bloody deed, as God no doubt will at the last reveal, though they conceal it ne'er so cunningly. All houses, gutters, sinks and crevices have carefully been sought for the blood, yet there's no instance found in any place.
Enter a porter and a gentleman.
But who is that brings a heavy load behind him on a painful porter's back?
Pray, gentlemen, which call you Beach's shop?
This is the place. What would you with the man?
Nothing with him. I hear the man is dead. If he be not, I have lost my pains.
He's dead indeed, but yet we cannot find what has become of half his hopeless body. His head and legs are found, but for the rest, no man can tell what has become of it.
Then I do think I can resolve your doubt and bring you certain tidings of the rest. And if you know his doublet and his shirt, as for the body, it is so abused that no man can take notice whose it was. Set down this burden of another's shame. What? Do you know the doublet and the shirt?
And the porter exits at this point, apparently.
This is the doublet. These, the severed limbs which they were joined to that mangled trunk. Lay them together. See if they can make among them all a sound and solid man.
They all agree, but yet they cannot make that sound and whole which is a remorseless hand has severed with a knife of cruelty. But say, good sir, where did you find this out?
Walking betime by Paris Garden Ditch, having my water spaniel at my side, When we approached unto that hapless place where this same trunk lay drowned in a ditch, my spaniel gan to send, to bark, to plunge into the water, and came forth again, and fawned on me, as if a man should say, help out a man that here lies murdered. At first I took delight to see the dog, thinking in vain some game did there lie hid amongst the nettles growing near the bank. But when no game nor anything appeared that might produce the spaniel to this sport, I gan to rate and beat the harmless cur, thinking to make him leave and follow me. But words nor blows could move the dog away, but still he plunged, he dived, he barked, he ran, still to my side as if it were for help. I, seeing this, did make the ditch be dragged, and there was found this body as you see, with great amazement to the lookers-on.
Behold the mighty miracles of God, that senseless things should propagate their sin, that are more bestial far than beastliness of any creature most insensible.
Cease we to wonder at God's wondrous works, and let us labor for to bring to light those masked fiends that thus dishonor him. This sack is new, and lo, behold his mark remains upon it which did sell the bag. Amongst the salters we shall find it out when and to whom this bloody bag was sold.
'Tis very likely. Let no pains be spared to bring it out if it be possible. 'Twere pity such a murder should remain unpunished amongst Turks and infidels.
Sirs, I do know the man that sold this bag, and if you please, I'll fetch him presently.
With all our hearts, how say you, gentlemen? Perchance the murder thus may come to light.
I pray you do it. We will tarry here,
And exit the first neighbour.
and let the eyes of every passenger be satisfied, which may example be how they commit such dreadful wickedness.
And enter a woman.
And please your masterships, the boy is dead.
Third neighbour.
'Tis very strange that having many wounds, so terrible, so ghastly, which is more, having the hammer sticking in his head, that he should live and stir from Friday night to Sunday morning, and even then depart, when that his master's mangled corpse were found. Bring him forth too. Perchance the murderers may have their hearts touched with due remorse, viewing their deeds of damned wickedness.
And they bring forth the boy and lay him by beach.
Here is the salter's man that sold the bag.
My friend, how long since you did sell that bag, and unto whom, if you remember it?
I sold the bag, good sir, but yesterday, unto a maid. I do not know her name.
Nor where she dwells?
Nope, certainly.
But what apparel had she on her back?
I do not well remember what she wore, but if I saw her, I should know her, sure.
Go round about to every neighbour's house, and will them show their maids immediately. God grant we may find out the murderers.
And go to one house and knock at the door, asking,
Bring forth such maids as are within your house.
I have but one, I'll send her down to you.
Is this the maid?
No, sir, this is not she.
And they go to another one.
How many maids do dwell within this house?
Oh, here's near a woman. There's near a woman here, except my wife. And they go to Mary's house.
Whose house is this?
An honest civil man's called Master Merry, who I dare be sworn would never do so great a murder. But you may ask here, go to for fashion's sake.
And Rachael sits in the shop.
Now, fair maid, dwells any here but you? Thou hast too true a face for such a deed.
No, gentle sir, my brother keeps no more.
This is not she?
No, truly, gentlemen.
And exit Rachael.
This will not serve. We cannot find her out. Bring in those bodies. It grows towards night. God bring these damned murderers at length to light.
And they exit. Okay, again, so much to put in here, but it's lovely to have so many things that we think of now as murder mystery cliches, just leaping towards, because it's always a dog walker who finds the body. It's always someone walking the dog, and the gentleman's speech, which is the only substantial speech really we have in this selection of scenes, is just your classic. Oh yeah, I was just walking the dog. Dog went mad when there was this thing. Oh no, it turned out to be a body, and then they're going over and they found a maker's mark on the sack. It's got all the things, and then they're doing a lineup, and you've got this witness. Can you recognise? And they automatically assume it's going to be the maid of the household. I don't know if they mean maid as in serving rather than just a young woman. But he doesn't recognise Rachael, so maybe it wasn't Rachael who bought the bag. Who bought the bag then? Or is he just not a very reliable witness? You know what people's memories are like? They can't remember faces. Witnesses are useless. So, all sorts of interesting questions. Helen?
I think a maid is an unmarried woman who would wear her hair differently.
That's what I was assuming once we got through that to Rachael, then yeah.
Yeah, so that's why that's how they tell the difference.
And then we have this grim jigsaw puzzle of all the pieces that they've found so far. A scene that I suspect is quite slow. We also have the one potentially comedy character of the second Waterman, who is frankly should be murdered.
Yes.
It's the second Waterman or the first Waterman? Which one was it? It was the second Waterman. Was the incredibly annoying, but quite comically annoying as well. I quite like that. It's just going, what are you gonna do? I can't get excited about the potential things that might happen in my life. Eric.
I was gonna say that to have that in the play, that just feels like maybe they're doing like a sort of caricature of someone or a specific type of Waterman that they've encountered before, because like it's that thing of sort of it's just character comedy.
And it's nice to give these they're structurally important characters, but they're not characters that you're going to linger with. But it's nice to give them a bit of a life to them. I quite like the first and second Waterman. And one of them just has a crazy theory about how the body got there, and the other one's going, well, that's nonsense. Well, that's what you say. I'm sure we've met people like that. But we've got other little snippets as well. Williams and Cowley. I don't think we've met Cowley before, but we've obviously met Williams before. So Williams is obviously eaten up inside. We returned briefly to Mary and Rachael dealing with the legs there, and they mention Baynard's Castle. And of course, later on, the first Waterman says, "Where's your boat?" "Oh, it's down near Baynard's Castle." "Oh, right. Well, let's go down to there." Oh, I wonder what's going to happen here. What? Tripping over the body. So yeah, it's doing all the things in a series of sort of scenes. I love the sort of community policing aspect to this. If the community is figuring out who did it together, there's something quite heartening about that. I don't know. Helen.
I adored the idea that the hangman, having done his beheading and quartering, couldn't be asked to put the head on the pike and the legs on the gate and just dump them in the street. But they knew it couldn't be that because he'd left the clothes on, and of course the hangman always as the perquisite, which appears to be a guy called Bull. And he so there's the theory that they weren't even good enough to take. But no, I mean, there's this immediate assumption that it's some poor traitor being hung, drawn, and quartered, and then
And it's really bad. They were talking about burning the rags that they were cleaning the blood up with, but they don't get rid of the rags from the clothes from the body, which feels like a really important. It's the equivalent almost of fingerprints at that time. You would get rid of destroy the clothes because that's actually going to identify the body quicker than anything else. So that feels like really, really poor planning on Mary's part. Briony.
Yeah, I really like these small but sort of recurring characters that keep coming. I love the neighbours, and I love the second Waterman. I thought he was brilliant.
Oh yeah.
I'd rather have somebody that's colourful and a bit annoying than just too nice or bland. But I really don't get what the point of that woman was. Any other character could have delivered the news that this boy was dead. They could have just talked about it between themselves, or somebody's just told me the boy's dead. Why bring on a random woman?
It might be a maid from earlier and or later. That it's effectively someone established. I mean, the problem is also with the neighbours. We can't really be sure which neighbour is which, because we had 4 neighbours last time, and neighbour number 3 is speaking very like neighbour number 4 from yesterday. So there's a certain amount of dramaturgical work that we might want to do with this script to identify who's what. But yes, I mean, we don't know it's a woman or who's saying that line, actually. All we've got is this enter wom. And I suggested it wasn't a womble because I thought that might throw the text down a path we just couldn't come back from. But it would be someone making good use of the things that they find. Eric.
I was just gonna point out, because like sort of over the time that we've been, we've done sort of scenes with Mary and Rachael, and then we've had sort of scenes with Williams, who are both Rachael and Williams are linked to Mary. I was thinking that maybe they're sort of like he's outsourcing his guilt, basically, kind of thing. He doesn't actually feel the remorse himself, but like they are feeling it more than he is, and his grief.
And there's this other element when they're talking about the owner of the hammer, and is the cutler? Are they meaning Mary? Is he a cutler? Because I was wondering, do they already have the answer, or is it just Mary borrowed the hammer? So there's another potential witness who he's got lucky, has forgotten that he borrowed the hammer from, because otherwise they've gone straight to him and just gone, well, it can't be him because that's quite a nice person. So yeah, it's it's interesting how people's think. But I'm still that grim jigsaw, and then the gentleman. I just love the gentleman's line. I don't want anything with him. I hear the man's dead. If he's still alive, I'll go home.
With my porter.
Yeah, who doesn't say anything? Yes, the random porter who's doing the carrying for you, because you're a gentleman and you wouldn't do any carrying, would you?
And also, I had the ditch searched. Having beaten my dog.
Yeah, poor dog.
But then that's what you're supposed to do with the spaniel.
Yeah.
The more you beat them, the better they be.
On you, yeah.
We are not, however, pointing that forward as a modern thing that you should do. Do not beat your dog.
Not.
Do not do that. Eric.
I was just wondering about where they sort of bring out the boy. Is the boy dead or is the boy still alive? Because they're like sort of, they're kind of going, like maybe he's spoken words since Friday night or whatever, and then
the boy by that point is dead when they bring him out.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
But he was still alive at the beginning of the sequence. He hadn't said anything, and they didn't think he was going to live long.
But they brought him out. They've already brought him out once. Did they then take him back in again?
Oh, I assume so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'd be cluttering up
Wouldn't want
Padua.
him catching cold, would you?
Lois.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it leads you to expect that when Mary comes in, the boy is going to rise up and say, "My murderer," and then drop back again. But clearly that can't happen now. I mean, it's a cliche that we've missed somehow or other. But it's, I don't know.
He could still come back as a ghost.
Yeah, that might be it. I think otherwise he's being wasted.
Or
also, it was firmly believed that dead bodies bled.
Yeah.
On seeing when in the presence of their
that's why
murderers.
he's out there. Yeah. Because surely Mary is going to turn up at some point. Yeah.
Well, he has done,
Oh,
hasn't
that's
he?
right. Yeah, he was there, in fact, and it didn't happen.
And I was very disappointed that the bodies didn't immediately start gushing
Yeah.
blood,
Wonderful to happen.
because they did in Arden of Faversham.
Yeah.
Well, there's still time. There's still time. There's still another act and a half to go. So, well, we're into final thoughts around the room about the thing so far. Elizabeth, you've been here for both sessions. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the text. I'm really liking the two-hander narrative structure. So we're going to go to Padua and then we come back to London. And I think that kind of keeps the viewer kind of engaged. So I really like that aspect of the text.
It's interesting, the difference between Padua. Again, there was no delay in finding out who did the murders. The Duke already, knows the case. So it's quite different from the ongoing murder investigation that's going on here. Rachael, any final thoughts from you? Was that an unreasonable question?
Oh my God. It's not bad. It's not a bad play, but this is the weirdest play. The second Waterman came in, I just fell apart, and I've not been able to put myself back together since. This is campy or this is farce, but it's weird as hell.
But yeah, it's just like every murder show that we've got today. I mean, it's got every single murder mystery beat in it. Down to the first and second Waterman, down to the persons what find the body who are a bit colourful. Do you want to jump back in again?
Yeah, that part, it's just like, it literally was like Send in the Clowns, but it was like just they opened the tiny car and just more and more came out and it didn't stop.
Valentina, you weren't here yesterday, but you will be here tomorrow. So, stepping midway through the carnage, any final thoughts?
I'm loving it. I'm a big fan of crime shows, so this is great for me. I'm looking forward tomorrow to see if there is, what the parallel is between the two stories. How do they... I mean, I don't expect them to converge, but, what the parallel is going to be. But yeah, I'm loving it so far. Having great fun.
Alan, any final thoughts?
I'm finding it incredibly difficult to see this as anything that could be presented as a serious piece. When you get the comedy double act of the two dodgy geezers of south of the river, governor, and the broker's men, who sort of end up fighting each other in the Italian plot. I don't think you could get an audience to stay unlaughing for long enough to get anything other than comedy out of it.
Lois, any final thoughts?
Yeah, yes, I wonder about that too. I mean, it occurred to me that some of this extraordinary, ghoulishness might be the result of following a source. I take it this was a true crime, so that might even explain the lack of what I was just talking about, that the body doesn't rise up and say, he killed me and fall back again. And maybe even that there wasn't any bleeding, because if none of that happened in the whatever account they're following, then I suppose they're following it. And there is so much detail of a rather ghoulish kind that it could be coming straight from kind of the equivalent of the police report.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the London one, it is. It follows that logic. The Italian plot, which has been transposed, may be more interfered with in terms of its sort of true criminess. But yeah, there does seem to be the London plot that they're following things. That's why it's 15 times.
Yeah.
You wouldn't make it 15 times if you were just writing the play, it seems to be.
Yeah. Oh, and the Italian plot, the thing that struck me is they do find out quite quickly, but poor, what's his name, the son who likes the little boy so much, is on the point of being arrested for his murder just on, because he's there, which, seems like a real miscarriage of justice. And if the other guy hadn't survived long enough to say what had happened, presumably, I was thinking that would be a fair treatment for his father, who would be devastated to discover that his son was being executed just before, and might even confess or something. It's a weird bit of plotting.
Eric, any final thoughts?
I actually made a list for once, so that I don't forget. It's just like, it's weird because I think because we've done Arden and Faversham first, we kind of expect comedy, like not even comedy violence, like the sort of like the window sill dropping on someone, I think that was in Arden and Faversham, but we're like, okay, where's the funny part in this? But then there isn't supposed to be a funny part until the Waterman, and there are some parts like the Fallerio going, you're that was just like to mislead people. Not, you're supposed to kill him. I paid you to kill him. And that makes me think it's sort of like a sort of B movie type area rather than an actual like gore filled crime driven drama. Although I don't know, like sort of there's a point going, if you had it sort of set in if you tried to make a modern production where like it was set, I don't know, with the boy in hospital kind of thing, it would be kind of weird because that there are so many things that could break this if you modernize it, like mobile phones and stuff, and it just, I think it's quite a piece of its time, which is quite interesting, and I'm curious to see what happens next.
Briony stepping in mid flow. You missed most of the. You missed about 50% of the murders, so you got the Italian murders rather than the London murders. How's it been for you?
It's really interesting. It's very different, and I'm always a fan of something that's like quite dark. So this is right up my alley. And I'm loving the little some of the little bit part characters coming in. I haven't been super upset at the death that I've witnessed thus far, even though I was playing one of the murdered people, because I just didn't find his character as compelling as some of the others that we've met. But I'm loving it so far. Can't wait to see how it ends.
Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yes, I don't know that I agree that this is like unremittingly black humor. I think it more sort of veers back and forth between this can't help but be funny and this can't help but be horrific, and sometimes both at the same time. So as we go through it, I think managing the tone becomes a more complicated and interesting problem. My original final thought, though, was about the different shapes of the story arc and how interesting that is. That the delay in the London plot is the solving of the crime, and the delay in the Italian plot is the committing of the crime. So I don't know, that's just really interesting to me that choice was made. It does keep the viewer a little more off balance. And like I was saying yesterday, why interlace them rather than do one than the other? But it seems to actually work better when you have them toggling back and forth and having their pacing be a little off. It kind of keeps you a little off balance, which I think is good, is actually an effective audience manipulation technique.
Helen, any final thoughts?
Yes, Lynn has said an awful lot of what I now discover I think as a result of what she said. I think I was trying to work out what it was. I mean, there was a suggestion somewhere in the chat, Alan, that it might have been interesting to reinstate the Italian plot back in Norfolk and have it in a neighboring village, but perhaps. But nevertheless, I think what Lynn said is absolutely right, that you have such a different tone, such a different use of language, such a different use of the stage. I mean, everything is so different that it's a very good example of how two plays could differ. But on the other hand, it's in the same play. I think it's fascinating for that.
I've got a final thought that I just want to throw in. Just in terms of tone and that question about humour or for that matter, people laughing at rather than with this. In terms of the text, we've got some character comedy with the first and second Waterman, where there does seem to be a reasonable signalling there that there's a mini clown element going on. But I think the thing that we are definitely finding funny is actually the stage directions and the way they're phrased. And more importantly, my bad for saying them in a slightly deadpan way. And I think that is massively, massively misleading to how to read this. Because whenever you have a bold line of they fight, they kill it, they die, any of those moments, you take away the moment of them having any reality. And it's a really dangerous thing as we go into our final session. All of those moments when we've got body parts being laid out in a jigsaw, that's being done by people who care, who know the person. This is a moment that takes time. It's not necessarily a moment for humour. And the murders earlier on, I mean, most of the murders in the murders in the London sequence were very deliberately done off stage or only partially seen. So the excess of the number of times of the hitting is something that's almost a sound thing. It's a half seen thing, and I suspect is all the more effective for that. So I think we've got to be really, really careful about seeing humour in the text because I'm the one cocking up the tone in the room. And that's my fault, for which all I can do is apologise. All that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Bye. See the bodies.